Welcome to this University of Brighton podcast, this week in collaboration with Sport Brighton, the university's sporting arm, with tips and advice on how to stay fit, active and healthy during the coronavirus restrictions. I'm Richard Newman and my guest this week is Rob Nitman, Performance, Sport and Fitness Officer at Sport Brighton. How's it going, Rob?
I'm good, thank you, Rich. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. How are you spending your time? I mean, you're a Performance, Sport and Fitness Officer, so this must be quite an odd time for someone that is pretty active all the time.
Yeah, it's a strange one. Being cooped up in a one-bedroom basement flat in Brighton with my better half. I think she's probably getting sick of me because if you ask any of my colleagues, they'll tell you I'm a fidgety person at the best of times, let alone when I'm cooped up. So doing what we can. Luckily, we've got a bit of back garden, so I get out there as best I can, and we're near Preston Park. And then just cracking on with work, trying my best to keep it as close to 9 to 5 as possible. Just trying to fill the time.
Rob, can you tell us what you'd usually be doing on a day-to-day basis with Sport Brighton and a bit on your background too?
Yeah, for sure. So my background is largely in strength and conditioning. I started my career quite fortunately as an intern with a professional rugby team. I spent a season there. I then went abroad for a season in New Zealand and did another year before spending 3 years as a head of S&C for semi-professional rugby teams. From there, I then moved into the academic realm where I moved to work at Eastbourne College for 2 years as their head of S&C before coming to the University of Brighton just shy of 2 years ago. And my role at the university is kind of split between two separate sections. So I act as the lead S&C on all of our internal and external contracts. So that's stuff like coaching our scholarship athletes, coaching some teams, developing other S&C coaches within the university, where I link in with Rob Harley and Flo Pitch in SASM. And then also external contracts where we work with people like Brighton Hove Albion Women's Academy. And we're also a TAS accredited site, so we work with some TAS athletes as well. Alongside that is also the performance sport role. So that's, again, working with the scholarship athletes and gold teams and things like that, looking at how, as a department at Sport Brighton, we can bring up the performance levels of all of our teams and athletes within the university.
We're going to crack on with some advice on what people can do in their own homes. And you're going to give us some tips a bit later on about how people can do that as well. First of all, I mean, these are pretty strange times. How important is it that everyone keeps active while they're mainly confined to their own home?
I think it's incredibly important. Plenty is said about obviously the physical benefits of exercise. Not only for your heart and lungs and your brain and your circulatory system and everything else, but I think at the moment one of the biggest benefits of it is the mental side. So obviously at the moment we're very fortunate we're still able to get outside, and with the weather the way it's been the last 2 weeks, that would be my biggest advice to anybody, is just go for a walk. Get out, get into the countryside as best you can, even if you've only got a small garden space like myself. It's something, and obviously sunshine has loads of other benefits added to it, as well as just being outside and potentially being with loved ones if you can. I think it's just going to play a massive part, because we can almost use exercise at this point as a distraction. And I think that will help to get people through almost making it a part of their day regularly, even if it's half an hour. If it's part of your day, it's something you can look forward to, and it distracts away from some of the madness that's going on.
It's so important to get outside, isn't it? The mental benefits of staying active are huge. Just to get out, we can go out for about an hour or so. You can go out for a walk, a run, a cycle. If you don't do much of that, usually this is actually quite a good time to take it up, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even myself, I'm not the biggest fan of running, and I know, coming from somebody working within quote unquote the fitness industry, that's quite rare. But I'm not exactly built for it, and I've just never really enjoyed it. But I'm finding myself doing it purely because, well, the weather's nice and I don't have a huge amount of other options. And so, it's one of those things where I think people will slowly start to feel the benefits of it from the physical part, and also the mental. They'll start to really buy in, and hopefully that'll be a more long-term, recipe for success.
And there are some great beginner programs out there for running if it's not something that you usually would do. So Couch to 5K, for example, from the NHS is a really good, this is a good time to take it up with this weather, as you say, is as nice as it is at the moment, having turned from some pretty grotty stuff and now we're getting some good stuff.
Yeah, it seems to have come about right at the right time, doesn't it? I mean, as much as we're in isolation, it's not ideal, but I'd much rather be able to nip out at lunchtime and have a walk around the park currently than, you know, being in the office and going for a walk there. As much as that's lovely, it's just a little bit nicer to be in the countryside. And like you said, it's an ideal time to do things like the 5K, the Couch to 5K. We've actually got one of my colleagues, Georgia Lilly, is actually running a Couch to 5K program within the university. So if anybody wants to find out more, if you head to the Sport Brighton Instagram page, there's more information on that on there as well.
Yeah, great stuff. And we'll put a link in the podcast description about that as well, along with other things that we're talking about throughout this conversation. And one thing that does seem to be becoming a thing over the last few days and weeks is runners maybe not being sensible enough with social distancing. So what advice would you say to people who are maybe not doing that? Because I think dog walkers and runners are maybe becoming each other's worst enemy at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's ultimately at the moment with all the social distancing rules, it's a little bit messy, and it almost feels like some people, because they've been called guidelines and they're not necessarily been enforced in the strictest of ways. I think a lot of people are starting to play flex with them a little bit too much, and ultimately, I think the longer that people play around with those kinds of things, the longer of an impact it's going to have on the rest of us. So, you know, hopefully by actually abiding by the guidelines that have been set out, then we can get through this that little bit quicker, that little bit sharper, and come out of it on the other side. So I think if you are going, exercising, whether that be jogging, cycling, whatever it might be, I think unless you're going with your household, where obviously you can be within touching distance because you're in and around each other, it's just being mindful of those other people around you. So my wife and I, when we go walking, it almost feels sort of rude, and especially as a Brit, you know, we try not to be rude in as many ways as we can, and it feels bad when you have to swerve to avoid people. But unfortunately, at the moment, that's the world we live in. So you just have to make sure you're giving that 2 meter berth. And just be mindful of others, you know, check your shoulder whilst you're running or cycling, just to make sure you're not going to be knocking anybody over, because there's families out and around, and the last thing you want to do is be responsible for something passing to more people.
And of course, being outside and running and cycling may not suit everyone, as you say. You are the biggest runner yourself. People that go to the gym are really missing the gym because, you know, they haven't got the equipment. Some people are panic buying a little bit and buying like a bit of a home gym stuff. But what can people be doing at home in terms of sort of body weight exercises and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I think body weight is the first and, you know, probably the easiest one to land on. You know, you've got thousands of different exercises that you can do which incorporate your body weight only. You know, you think about a simple body weight squat, a lunge, you know, a lateral lunge, a push-up, all those kinds of things. That people consider them the basics, but you know, that doesn't mean that they don't work, and that doesn't mean they're not going to be beneficial in the long term. And then outside of that, it's starting to think outside the box and starting to make use of little things that you might have around the house. So for me, a water bottle, you know, this holds a litre, that's near enough a kilo. It may not be a huge amount of weight, but it's something that's better than nothing. You can hold one of those in each hand. You can do some different exercises. Another alternative, I grabbed an old backpack out of underneath my bed, and I filled that with old water bottles or cans or shoes or books, whatever I can find. And I chuck that on my back, either when I go for a walk or to add a bit of resistance to a squat, to a lunge, to a push-up, all those kinds of things. And it's trying to think, you know, laterally. If you want something heavy than a backpack, an old sports bag, or you know, your wheelie suitcase you might take to the airport, you know, pick that up and throw that around, and you've all of a sudden got a little bit more resistance to be moving with.
For people that maybe aren't that used to even going to the gym, and they're maybe starting to take up some exercise classes, maybe if they're online, at home during this time, what sort of advice would you give to them? Have you got anything that you can sort of demonstrate about what people could be doing?
Yeah, of course. Well, first off, in terms of options at Sport Brighton, we've got quite a few already that we've put out there to the masses. So every Monday we're releasing something we call Move Monday, which is just a quick little snippet that we're sending out on Instagram and YouTube, which people can follow along with. On a Wednesday, we're doing a Wellbeing Wednesday, which currently has been led by Georgia Lilly, our Wellbeing Officer, but that's also going to branch out wider in our department. Then we've also got something that we call UOB Fit, which I'm sure we'll get into shortly, so we won't talk too much on it now. But that's basically an online program which is free. Anybody can sign up, and it's all on an app on your phone. The final one, we've actually now got live online classes which we're delivering through the website, sport.brighton.ac.uk. And you can follow online classes on there. We've got yoga, we've got HIIT, those kinds of things. But in terms of in the house, if people want just simple movements to be able to do with pieces of kit, we can do a couple of quick demonstrations if that's something you want to do.
Let's go for it. Yeah, let's have a look.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I'll just change the angle slightly. So as you can see from here, I've not exactly got the most amount of space myself. This is my living room, which is mostly taken up by sofas and seats. So, this is what people are making do with at the moment, and I'm no different. So you see I've got my backpack loaded already over here. So you take your old trusty backpack, and you can use it for all sorts of different exercises. So a couple that I've been doing personally is to grab both handles, and I'm going to lean forward to the hips, keeping hold of both handles and just pull towards my chest. So that's exactly the same movement as a bent over row in the gym, where you have a barbell leaning forward and pulling towards your belly button. We're just going to use a backpack instead. Similarly, for a bodyweight squat, to make it a little bit trickier, just chuck the backpack on, strap it up nice and tight, and then you can do your bodyweight squats, making sure your knees are still tracking over your toes. And for an upper body push movement, the last one we'll probably look into is going to be holding the handle of your bag, putting it in on the back side of your arm, and then just pressing it above your head to lower back down. So you can cover all parts of the body really just with a simple little backpack.
That's pretty good advice. And I guess what can complement that, as you were saying just now, was is UOB Fit. So it'd be probably a good time to go through that and tell us what that's all about.
Yeah, for sure. So the UOB Fit is just something that we wanted to produce to give people another option. Obviously, for the large amount of people going to the gym, you're either just going to go in and do the same thing that you do every day, or every 3 times a week, or whatever it might be. So all of a sudden, you're thrown out of your comfort zone. You don't know where to turn. So we created this program, which just gives people an option. It gives them a direction. It gives them something which they can look into and follow. It's on an app called Train Heroic, which is an American app. I've been using it for years personally, and we just decided to open it up to members of the staff as well. And UOB Fit was designed for the beginner to intermediate level of participant in sports. So the lowest level of thing that we're doing is a daily walk, where we're just setting 30 minutes a day. Just go for a walk, get out and about. If you want to make it harder, walk faster, or grab a loaded backpack. And then other sessions will do things like little circuits of squats and lunges and push-ups, or core movements and things like that. The real benefit of it is that it's free and it's on your phone, so you don't need anything else other than your smartphone to be able to access it. And the other best thing about it is that there's a video demonstration of every movement that's on there. So even if you don't have a huge amount of gym experience, that doesn't matter whatsoever, because you can click the video and it will show you exactly how to perform the exercise there and then. So it's almost a PT in your pocket. It's just makes life easy.
It's good for people to have that kind of plan and that structure, especially at a time when all that's kind of gone out the window. We're having to sort of create one for ourselves.
Yeah, it gives that little bit of stability, that little bit of structure. And like we said sort of at the start of this, it drags away from the madness. If you've got something which right, half an hour of this on UOB Fit every day of the week, I can do it at 8 o'clock in the morning if I want to. I can do it at lunchtime. I can do it at 5 p.m. Whenever suits you, but you make that part of your regular day, and all of a sudden you've got some structure back and things start to feel more normal.
Yeah, and we'll put links, as I said, in the podcast description. I've seen people say that really In some ways, we should all be coming out of this. A lot of us should be coming out of this in actually better shape than before the virus. Really, and we have a bit more time at home. I guess there's actually a possibility for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a two-sided coin on that one, where more people are feeling willing to go out and about and exercise because they've got more time, and that might not necessarily be for those people who are working from home like myself. I'm still working my 37 hours a week, but I'm not traveling to and from, and albeit for me that's not a long journey. So my wife, as an example, she normally drives 45 minutes to and from, maybe an hour to and from. So that's an hour and a half to 2 hours of her day she's getting back, which she can now devote to exercise if she wanted to. And not only that, the secondary part of that is being at home, we potentially have an increased ability to be able to cook our own food. For a lot of people, the nutritional side of it is a downfall. And so, picking up a packed lunch or picking up a Tesco meal deal or going to, a canteen and getting fish and chip Friday, that might now, being at home, give you more of an option to be able to cook healthy choices and, to have whatever it is that you want pretty much as and when you want it. And for some people, that might be a downfall because you've got the option to snack. But other people, it gives you the option to have fresh fruit and vegetables, 5+ times a day, which is going to be a massive benefit this time.
That's a good point, actually. So I guess with this extra time, you actually have time not to think about more about your well-being, and a lot of that is about your general fitness, but about your nutrition as well. So you do have more time maybe to experiment with food, eat healthier, and stay fit.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things that so many people have been talking about, on social media and that kind of stuff, is using this time to upskill in different areas. And why not make that in the kitchen? Albeit a couple of weeks ago, we had all the dramas with the supermarkets. That seems to have calmed itself back down now. You might have to queue a little bit longer, but it seems like they're pretty much fully stocked. So, why not follow one of these online cooking classes that you can do, or why not buy a new recipe book off Amazon and then just try and do one new meal a week? All of a sudden, by the time this is over, you could have a whole host of new options in your menu, and that's only going to be good for you long term, I think.
Well, it's all great advice, and we finish each podcast with some questions away from your work, just to get to know you a little bit better, I guess. So the first one is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Biggest one for me, I think it's probably one that's been said all the time. Is just try to enjoy yourself along the way. I don't think I didn't do that, but I think too many people put too much pressure on the small things, and then they forget to actually just have a good time and soak it all in.
Good advice. If you could pick any subject to study at the University of Brighton, what do you think it would be?
I think if I was going to redo an undergraduate, I would be looking at the strength and conditioning courses due to the line of work that I'm in. But currently I am actually looking at joining a postgraduate course next year, and that's the MA in Leadership and Management, which is something I feel would add a good few strings to my bow.
Cool. Can you pick a favourite place in Sussex?
For me, it's probably going to be Burling Gap. Just a lovely place to go for a walk on a day like today. Go on the weekend. If you get out there nice and early in the day, you get to see lovely sunrise, or in the evening a lovely sunset over the coast. It's just a really nice spot.
And then looking forward, or even going back to the times when we could do whatever we wanted to do in your spare time, if you could give visitors to Brighton and the area a tip of what to do or experience, what would it be?
Potentially a bit of a strange one, but I think it's going to be a little bit less touristy, not necessarily a certain attraction. But one of my favourite spots and one of my favourite things to do is just to go to the North Lanes in Brighton and just sit in one of the little coffee shops and just watch the world go by. Because I think we live in a place where there's such a wide range of people, and you've got the eclectic mixes from every end of society. And I think sometimes it's best just to sit there and just enjoy everything that Brighton has to offer.
Tell us something interesting about you which most people may not know.
I had to rack my brains on this one because I think a lot of people know a lot of my weird little quirks. But one which I don't think I've mentioned before to many people is when I was about 12 or 13 years old, I had the opportunity to take part in a rugby training session with the great one, Jonah Lomu. So that was quite an experience.
Wow, that's really impressive. If you could pick, amazing. And final one is, if you could pick 3 people to host for a dinner party, who would they be and why?
Are we allowed dead or alive?
You absolutely are, yeah.
Absolutely.
Anyone.
Fantastic. So that makes it easier. So my 3 are going to be David Attenborough, because the man's a wealth of knowledge and he's a national saint. So it'd be good just to hear some of his stories. Following on in a similar vein, but from the other side of the pond, would be Muhammad Ali. I think one of the greatest sporting icons the world has ever known, and also a man who could probably tell you many tales. And then the third one, a long time ago, but again, somebody who could tell you some interesting stories, would be Marcus Aurelius.
Well, yeah, good choices. Rob, thank you so much for joining us on this week's podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And that's about it for this week. If you enjoyed it, you can subscribe via most podcast apps like TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. But for now, it's goodbye.